What's up, beautiful chicks? Today we have a bit of a heavier topic, and it's guilt. Is guilt keeping you stuck? Is it keeping you in a body that you do not like to do life in? Is it keeping you in a job that you hate? Is it keeping you in relationships that are just toxic and not serving you? And that might seem like a crazy question on the surface, but I'm going to give you lots of examples to work through because I see it so often. It's so incredibly common because here's how it works. It's not like we consciously say, well, I'll feel really guilty if I lose weight, or I'll feel really guilty if I change jobs. But we let guilt prevent us from acting in a way to get ourselves out of these situations. And therefore, guilt is essentially keeping us stuck. So let's work through a few examples so you can see if this is even pertinent to you. And if not, maybe you've seen this with like some of your girlfriends or, whatever. And then I'm going to give you some questions to kind of think about at the end to wrap things up and maybe try to like shift some perspective around these. So here's a for instance. When women are like, hey, I really want to lose weight, but my husband makes me all of my favorite foods and I'm going to feel really guilty if I don't eat them. Like he just worked so hard on this. I can't say no. Or it's Christmas and somebody gives you a food gift and you're like, well, I had to eat this because, I would feel really bad if I wasted it. Or we might say something like, well, I don't really have time to go to the gym because I'd feel guilty if I spent more time away from my kids. So it's all of these like guilt type things that are impacting the decisions that we're making. Does that make sense? I see this with nurses who are so burnt out at the bedside right now. And they're like, I just need to get a different job. Well, part of the reason why we don't leave is because that's what your degree is in and that's how you know how to make money. And so that's one thing. But there's also this guilt component to it right now because there is such a nursing shortage that people are like, well, I would feel bad if I left the bedside. But then they're sitting there getting mandated and working 70 hours a week and hating their life, even though they don't have to work and they could leave. So guilt, again, kind of keeping somebody stuck in a situation that they don't want to be in, or with relationships. Now, I'm not saying that you just go cutting off everybody who isn't good to you, but there are some times where a relationship does need to end, or conversations need to be had and boundaries need to be established so that that relationship can be repaired and could potentially be fruitful, right? But sometimes people don't even realize how we're feeling about something because we feel too guilty to share it. We feel guilty even speaking up for what our needs are. We just think that we have to be complacent with however people are treating us because that's what love is. And it's like, no, not really. We can express what our needs are, decide what those are, first of all, then express it, and then expect for people to reasonably meet those. People are going to disappoint us, of course, but when there's like repeated patterns of behavior that we're just kind of like allowing because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or something along those lines, then that's when we need to speak up and we need to do something different. Okay. So the very first thing that I would do is say, is this assumption that I'm making even true? So let's say it's the workout one. Well, is it true that you can't lose weight and get in shape because you would have to go to the gym and be away from your kids more? No, you could work out at home, or you could work out for like 20 minutes instead of it being like an hour, or maybe you could eat healthier, which doesn't really take any time away from the family. There's things like that. Or maybe you do need to go to the gym for like an hour. Now, if you work, you're like, no, every extra minute has to go to my kids. But like if you're outside of the home for 8 hours, 9 hours a day anyways, and you add one more hour to it just twice a week, that if you're sedentary would make a change for you. And at the end of the day, the extra 2 hours in the week compared to the 40 that you were already away, your kids probably really wouldn't notice, you know what I mean? Depending on what their ages are. And so it's like, what are we making? Like, what kind of meaning are we giving this? What are we making this mean? And is it even true? Or is it something where we just need to have a quick conversation? So for the example of the husband who's so sweet and he keeps making you all your favorite like meals that are like fettuccine or it's dessert or whatever. He's so, so sweet. Well, yeah, you don't want to be mean. He's making you good things. But if you explain to him that, hey, I'm really trying to take better care of my health. And so I'm trying to avoid this, this, and this. So just giving you a heads up because I think it's so, so sweet that you always make me those things. But then I feel like I have to eat them. It like makes me feel bad if I don't. So can you just like do me a solid and not make me those things anymore? Well, then if this person continues to do it, now they're the one who's overstepping, right? You've asked them not to. If they continue, then it's like, oh, you're so sweet. Thank you for making me that. However, I'm not going to eat it because as we discussed 2 days ago, I just told you I'm not eating those things. Is it a best friend who continuously does something that's like super annoying or hurtful and maybe they don't even know? Like we're all in our own heads, right? So maybe they just need to be told. And those conversations are not comfortable. But like think about it if the shoe were reversed. If you were the friend who was doing the annoying thing that was hurting somebody that you love and you were just oblivious to it, wouldn't you want them to tell you? It wouldn't be comfortable. Of course, you wouldn't like to hear that you've been hurting somebody, but you would want to know so you could stop doing it, right? And so give that person the same courtesy. Let them know, hey, when you do this, I don't think you mean anything by it, but here's how it makes me feel. So can you quit doing that? What kind of conversations do you need to have to be happier in all of these areas? So here's another question to ask yourself. Is it really on you how a certain person feels about something? So let me try to think of an example for this one. Okay. I've had people who are married and they want to lose weight. And one of the things that is holding them back, and sometimes they're not even aware of it at first, but then they kind of like figure it out and they're like, oh, I think I'm actually going to feel really bad for my spouse if I lose weight because we're both overweight right now. And I don't want that person to feel bad. And as sweet as that is that really fair to you? Like to hold yourself back for your health, maybe generating more income, like whatever it is, because it's going to make somebody else feel bad about themselves. Is that really your responsibility for that person to feel better about themselves? So then you're like dragging yourself down to make somebody else feel better. Like that's like not really super healthy either. Right. And so sometimes we have to like just become aware that we're even having those thoughts and just be like, well, how can I go about this in a loving way where I'm not intentionally making this person feel bad about themselves, right? I'm not going to make comments about it. I'm not going to do things like that. But then other than that, if they feel a certain way, that's on them. Like we can't take on how positively changing our own life is going to affect another person. Like we're all adults. That's on them. That's something they have to sort out. Yes, it sucks. We don't want to see people feeling bad, but you can't let it like stifle your own growth. And then last question would be, what is a different version of the story that you're telling yourself about this? So if you feel guilty taking time to meal prep or go to the gym or things like that, what's another version of this story? Well, another version is that by getting healthier, you're setting a better example for the people in your house. So like, I don't want to have time away from my kids can turn into, I want to model healthy behavior for my kids. Or when I take the time to prepare us healthy meals, I'm actually saving us money because we're not going out to eat and the whole family's eating healthier. So there's always like more than one way to look at a situation, right? And our first natural way of viewing a situation or thinking about a situation, that doesn't mean that it's true. It's just what came to our mind first. So always questioning our own thoughts and being like, okay, well, what's true about this? Maybe it is true. Maybe it's not. What else might be true? And sometimes I think that can kind of help us shift into getting unstuck with the whole guilt thing. But I know that this is a really heavy topic. For some women, this affects us really not at all. For some women, it affects us just kind of a little bit. And for some reason, and for some women, it can keep us totally, totally stuck. But recognizing it is the first step to working your way around it. And so if you have these areas in your life where you're like, ooh, maybe I am holding myself back out of guilt, then I would just encourage you to kind of like sit with that, play with that. How can you get yourself around that? Because what I do know to be true is that when you are feeling your best in multiple areas of life, you're going to show up better for the people around you. Everybody in your world benefits from a healthier, happier, more fulfilled you, even if the people around you don't necessarily feel like that's true at first. Some people are going to be a little bit miffed when you start making some positive changes. That's okay. They'll get over it. And then you'll have your best version of you to offer to all of your loved ones. So I know that one's a little bit heavier. As always, would love to hear your thoughts, and I will catch you all next week.